Welcome back, guys, to another awesome tutorial. I'm your host, BlissConX, and today we're going to be focusing on Unity. Now, what we're going to be doing is, again, a top-down RPG series with Unity, as well as the Construct series, which you can get over on our YouTube channel. Go and take a look. We're quite far with regards to that series, but we're going to be replicating this in Unity as well, because Unity is, unbiasedly, one of my favorite IDEs alongside the Unreal Engine. So we're going to hop straight in. For those of you that are new to Unity, you can go ahead and grab it at the unity.com website and download and get started. They have got a free edition for those that are keen in terms of individuals. They also do have an edition for students, and then obviously your premium edition. Now I'm going to go ahead and I've created a new project. It basically allows me to jump straight in, and I've selected new project and I've selected the 2D. Let me show you what that looks like. New project. Go ahead and select the 2D template and you should be good to go. It'll go ahead and create it and you're on your way. Now I'm going to be making use of the same assets that we have done in our previous series. So go ahead and just on the left hand side bottom on your assets here, go ahead and create the folders that's necessary. You'll be given a default folder of scenes, obviously. I've gone and created the art folder and then the animation. The art folder purely to keep the assets of the hero, as well as the game itself, all the enemies, the backgrounds, the tile maps, etc. So we've got everything nicely structured from the word go. So as you can see here, I've gone and created the art, then again the hero, and then the different animations that I'm going to be using later. So for now, I've just put in idle as well as walk, and then I've gone ahead and dropped down and sort of selected it from my folder and just dragged them straight in here. So you can drag them straight in, and then you can make use of these in the Unity engine. Right, so the first thing we need to do is, obviously, as this is a blank project, we're going to go ahead and put our little player in here. And I've set if you select the inspector, go ahead and set the pixels to 60. And it's set by default to 100, but I've just gone ahead, as I'll show you on the walk down, you can see it's set to 100. You need to go ahead and apply all these. Now, you can do this all simultaneously by selecting them all and then just applying the pixel per unit. I'm going to set mine to 16, obviously, and then click apply, because that's the pixel art size that I'm going to be using. All right. So now that we've got to go ahead and we've got our little character, let's go ahead and rename that character, so just makes a bit more sense. And I'm going to call this player for now, so that we know that that is the player that we have in question. Okay. Then the next thing we're going to do is two things. We're going to have to be setting the animation for this enemy, as well as the movement is the first starting process. So this works a lot different to the Construct series, because this is not as much event-based as you would like, but this is more a code-based IDE. So we're going to be doing a lot of C# development over the next coming weeks with regards to this series specific. Right, so on this hero, you can see we've got the transformation and the sprite rendering. I want us to go ahead and add the rigid component, the rigid body 2D component, and this is going to be used for our movement. I'll explain this shortly. And then I want you to go and set the gravity scale to 0 for me, preventing the hero from obviously falling through. And then on the constraints, I want you to set the free rotation Z for me as well. This basically just prevents the hero from rotating, so we just want to have that set at default. Right, so once you've gone ahead and done that, I want us then to go ahead and create our first, you could say, script that is going to be doing the magic. Just very much like the event sheets on the Construct series, that is going to be some of our magic, you could say, areas to which we're going to be applying code. So yeah, we can just go and type in, let's call it, just so we can keep the variables all nice and tidy. Let's go ahead and call that player movement. So let's go ahead and click add there, type in player movement, and click on new script. It'll just fill it in for you, and then create and add. Okay, so basically what this goes and does is, over on the assets here, I'm just going to pull this up for you quickly, you'll see we've got the player movement. Now normally most of these, you could say, IDEs, Unity in question, have different code IDEs that it uses to basically edit the code itself. Now, Mono is the default. I've selected Visual Studio, so you'd have to download that separately. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second. Basically, if I drag over this window, you'll see I'm using Visual Studio Code. Now, this is also free, so feel free to download it. So when you double click that, set that and assign that to this one specific. This just allows us to go ahead and make changes to the code, which is an easy way to basically progress as we move along. So I'm using Visual Studios. For those of you that also want to use Studios, please feel free to do just so. Right, so there's a few things here that we're going to need to do now with regards to this. Now, I don't necessarily use the avoid start, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that for now. This is obviously, as we save, this will appear in our Unity, the public functions that we create, and you'll see that as attributes, but I'm just going to give you a slight heads up. The update function, yeah, you could say, is basically, this is called every frame. Now, we're going to be doing the movement for the widget in this specific script that we've now created. So let's go and create two specific, you could say, variables. And the first one is going to be the public movement variable, which is a float variable because it will have a decimal. And we're going to call that move, let's call it move speed. Okay, and let's go and set that to 5. And then we can close that off. Right, so if I go ahead and save this now, just to give you an example, if I go ahead and save that, then I go back to my Unity, and I do the inspection on this little hero of ours, you'll notice that we've now got the move speed that we've just created, and we've got it set to 5. Now this is a moving, as you can see, this is a moving variable that we can now change and set as we please within Unity itself. So that's sort of how that works, you could say, together. Right, so going back to the back to the script, we're going to go ahead and add another public variable, and then we're going to call that the rigid, just to give you an idea, rigid body, and that'll be the 2D, which is 2D, right? And that we're going to just set for short for RB for now. Okay, if I go ahead and save that, that will then show it here as well. Give it a second. There we go. So here we can see the RB, and here you can see it set to the rigid body. Now what I will need you to do is drag this component here that you can see, this rigid body, and go and place it straight in there. That's just going to assign it to this variable. So now we know we can use it within that variable. Fantastic. So I'll hop back over onto our IDE again. Now there's a few things we can do. Now normally we often use the void update function to place our movement in the past. I find that this is not as accurate when working with physics specifically because of the fact that if there's a frame drop or there's a disruption within the frames per second, this can often hamper the movement and the movability. So we're going to be using another function, and we're going to call that the fixed update function. So we're going to type in void, we're going to type in void, and we're going to call this the fixed update function, and we're going to close that off. All right, and this is what we're going to use for our function with regards to the movement. Then we need to go and set the vector to hold the y and x axis, and that we just do is vector 2, and there we can go basically vector 2, and we can say that's equal to movement. Right. Now I should basically install the extension for the Unity and the C#. That way it'll just tab up, and that way I don't have to physically type it in every time. I can just tab it, but I'll do that after this tutorial. Right, now that we have got the vector 2 that holds the y and x axis, we can go ahead and fill this variable by means of placing it in the update, and there we're going to just go movement. Because it has obviously a .x and a .y, we're going to set the movement to the input, and there we're going to go input, and we're going to get the axis. A lot harder remembering each one now that I don't have the extension installed, and that will be the horizontal. So let's do that, and let's type horizontal, right, yeah, horizontal, and then furthermore we need to just do the same for the y-axis. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and paste that, tab that across. And let's set the y-axis, and that'll be the vertical. Right, fantastic. Okay, the next we need to do is obviously rigid set the RB with regards to that. So we're going to basically, and then obviously multiply that by the delta time so that we know that once that time expires it's set. So that we can do here, we can go RB dot move position, I'm so used to coming up, move position, and that we can just close off obviously, so that we know that that is the correct function. Then we can go RB dot position plus movement, which is the movement variable, multiply by the move speed. Move speed is obviously a capital because that's the variable name. Always need to make sure that you check your case sensitives, guys, and that we can multiply by the time, and that I think is fixed the delta if I'm not mistaken. I'll check now if that gives me an error. Delta time, I think that's correct. RB position plus the movement times the move speed. Okay, that should be correct. Go ahead and save that. That should theoretically give movement to our little character. So we're going to go ahead and just run that, and that'll give us, okay, there is an error, error compiled. So I've obviously got a little error here. There's my mistake. It's not axis rex, it's axis raw. So note to self, it helps having that extension. Axis raw. Fantastic. That we can go ahead and save. All right. Now what should happen is it should allow me to compile. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And now I should have the W, there it is, A and S, and also the arrow keys, which is fantastic. Great, so that's how we give movement to our little user. You can see we use the rigid body 2D component, and we went ahead and we've obviously assigned all that to our move speed variable. We've set the public so that we can obviously drop the component in and fill the RB, and these are conditions that are within the RB itself. Just to let you know, these are variables within this class. And yeah, we've set the X and Y axes, obviously, horizontal being X and the movement vertical being Y, and we've multiplied that by the speed as well as the fixed delta time. Right, so that's how we get movability. The next thing we're going to want to do is focus on the animation, so that when we are moving, walking, you could say right, that we give the right animation, left, as well as down and up. Right, so the next we're going to want to do is obviously set these animations. To do that, we need to select our hero, which is this one here, player on the left hand side, and go ahead and create a new animation. Now to do that, I want you to select window, go down to animation and select animation. You can also use Control-6 and that'll bring up a animation box. Now I've gone ahead, as you can see, and I've sort of pulled and dragged with the left click and placed mine over here. Just keeping it all unified because I'm more comfortable that way. This will normally come up in a pop-up, but you can just stick it down here next to console when you're doing the debugs. Alright, so what we need to do is create a new animation, and then I went and created a folder called animations. Keeping everything unified makes it a lot easier. So yeah, we're going to go and create a new one. I'm going to call it idle underscore, I'm going to call it down because that's the one that I currently have. I'm going to click save, and there it comes now, idle down, currently set at 60 frames per second. Then I'm going to go and drag the assets that I have on the left hand side here, as you can see that I preloaded prior to just saving time before the tutorial, and I'm going to go and drop them in, and then I'm going to set the frames to 80 because if I play this now it's going to be too quick. As you can see, he's miles too quick. So I'm going to quickly set that to 8, and that will be quite decent for our player. There we go. You can see the little animation is now working, which is fantastic. Now we need to go ahead and do the same for the walk downs. So let's go and create another one. We can just click on the current one and say create new clip. And yeah, we're going to go walking down. Right, let's do that. Walking down, or walk down, whatever you want to call it. Walk down. And click save. Right, so now we've got the walk down. And then we can go ahead and drop in these as well, just like we did with the previous one. Drop those in and set it to 8. So now I'm going to go ahead and set all of them. So let's go and create, and obviously again, create the walk up, the walk left, and the walk right. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. Right, so now that we've gone ahead and added all the animations, we can basically see what it looks like. If I select the player left-hand side, you'll notice the drop down, and there's all our animations. If we play them, they will do exactly as we need, which is fantastic. Now, if I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, you'll notice the animations folder that we created. We've got all the animations as well as a player controller, this animation controller if you want to call it that. If I double click that, you're going to be presented with what we call really a blend tree. Now a blend tree runs pretty deep. It's like blueprints for Unreal Engine and so forth, but I'm going to run this separate tutorial with regards to how powerful this can be, because you can do a lot within blend tree as well, opposed to just doing it the way we are going to do it. Now what I want us to do is, yeah, you'll see it's currently set to the idle down. If I wanted to make the default animation something else, let's say the walk left, I could right click and set that as the default state. All right, but in this case it's going to be the idle down. What I want to then do is I want to remove these animations for the time being. So I'm going to just delete that from the controller for now. If I want to bring them back, I can just drag them straight back by dragging whichever one I need. But in this case, I want to do something different. Right, so now that we have that sort of cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and add a float perimeter. Now this is quite vital. So yeah, by your layers, go ahead and add for me a float. And in this case, let's call it horizontal. Horizontal, spelling. Right, the first one, and that can be set to 0, 0 for now. This is going to basically be filled based on the Y and the X axis on the input controllers. The next one we want to add, of course, you guessed it, is going to be the vertical. So let's do another one, and let's call that vertical, and that's fantastic. Okay, then I want to go ahead and right click on the blend tree sort of structure, this empty canvas. I want to go and create a new state and say new blend tree. Okay, this is going to be our new tree. The reason why we separate that is that we want this to control all our movement. If we're going to be adding animations for, let's say, attack, anything else, etc., we want to create those in separate blend trees. That way it's just a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to go and click on this one, and then I want to go ahead and basically change this to movement. Right, so we know that this is the movement node that we're going to be working with. Right, fantastic. So there we've got movement, which just makes it a lot more simple. Now I want to double click in this movement, and then you're going to notice that the first perimeter has come up, which is this horizontal perimeter that we have here. Now I'm going to go ahead and basically change the blend type with the current tree set. I want to go ahead and change it to a 2D simple directional. And the reason for that is this is 1D currently set, but we're going to be working with both those perimeters. So let's go ahead and create that as a 2D simple directional. So that we have both of them, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the vertical as well. So now you'll see I've got the horizontal as well as the vertical perimeters that have come up on the blend tree. Then we need to go and create the 4 motions, which is vital. So let's go and add the first motion field. Let's add another motion field and one more motion field as well. So there we've got 1, 2, 3, and one more. Right, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are going to be our 4 animations based on the axis of the Y and the X. So now I'm going to click on the left-hand side. Yeah, you can see we've got the animations. And I want to drag all the individual ones. So first one, let's take the walk down. I'm going to put that in this block. I'm then going to drag the walk left. You could say, sorry, let's click on there. Let's use the walk left. And let's put it on this block. The walk up, obviously. There, and the walk right as well. Fantastic. Right, so with this red dot we can basically see what our animated character is doing. So I'm just going to pull up the blend tree here just to give you an idea and show you what that looks like. And then we need to set obviously the different positions. So obviously walking down would be 0 to the minus of the 1. The player walk up would obviously be between 1 and 0 and 1. The walk left will obviously be minus 1 versus 0, and obviously the player right, the walk right, sorry, would be 1 versus 0. Right, and that will set all our axes correctly. Now you'll notice above here, here's all the axes. So if I pull this red dot now, theoretically, all the animations should change, as you can see down below, to the respective, you could say, animated screens. So if I'm going up, that's what it should do. If I'm going left, that's what it should do. And if I'm going down, that's what it should do. So there you can see exactly what we wanted. Right, so the last thing we need to do is obviously set this node to work with the idle node. So if we go back to our base layer, you can see we've got the idle node as well as this movement node. So we need to create a transition between the two and then create a perimeter to know at which, if it's less or greater, on which to swap. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create another perimeter, call it a float, and call it the speed perimeter. Okay. I'm then going to set on this idle, I'm going to set and create a new transition over to movement and add and just click on this little behavior, which is the arrow here, and create a new condition. Now the condition needs to say that if the speed is greater than 0.01, then I want you to transcend into the movement, is what we're saying to the code theoretically. So we can go ahead and just obviously also uncheck this has exit time because we want it to be instant when transitioning between the two, and we can set this offset, you could say transition duration, we can also set that to 0. We want it to be pretty quick. Right, then we need to do the same backwards again to say from movement that if the speed is less than 0, in this case it's greater, if you look at this condition, greater than, go to movement, but now we want to make it less, we need to make a new transition. So let's again check on there, click on the arrow, add new condition and select the speed, which is the perimeter, which we've created this little float here, is less than 0.01. And then again, just set the transition to 0 as well as the has exit time. Right, so that should work. Now if I go ahead and pull the animator to the side, or at least select the game, pull the animator, just undock it here quickly to the side, and I click play. If I go ahead and change these speeds, you're going to notice that it will then change. Now you can see he's idling, you can see it's busy playing. If I set it to 1, he will now start walking. If I set the horizontal to 1, he should then change that as well. So if I go ahead and set that to 1, there you can see the vertical, and you get the point what I'm trying to get to. Okay, so we know that these animations are now working based on these values being filled. But now we need to, this is now me obviously filling them manually. We need to dynamically have that filled in our code. So we're going to go ahead and just stop that again. and dock this straight back so that I know it's all back where it used to be. And then we're going to go back to our, you could say our virtual Visual Studio Code, and we're going to go and make some changes. So the next thing we need to do is add another public, I'm going to do this here so it's all pretty neat, public variable over here, and we're going to add the animator class. So I'm going to go public, and I need to add these classes, this little extension to make it easier. Animator, and then we're going to call that animator with the lowercase, and we're going to fill that to a variable animator. Okay, I'm going to close that off, and then just quickly save that and ensure that that is then filled here as well on our player behavior. So if we click on our player behavior, we'll notice that the animator is here, and we should have this animator here. So I can go ahead and now and fill that variable with animator. So I'm going to drag this again and just fill it over there so that we know that the animator logic is being filled into that variable. And we go back to our code again for the last little bits. And here we're going to want to do three things basically. We're going to want to set the speed, the vertical, and the horizontal. So here we're going to go animator, which we've now set obviously. Set float. I'm guessing it here because I don't have the extension installed. Set float to the movement, which is the variable we have above, to x, and we're going to probably close that off as well. Let's do that, sorry. Let's set the float, and this will be the horizontal. So horizontal, okay, and then I need to obviously set the same for the vertical. So I'm going to just copy that across and just paste that underneath. So we go animator, set float, and that's going to be vertical, and then the movement y. Fantastic. The last thing we're going to need to do is obviously set the speed, and yeah, we're going to go animator again, set float, and in this case it's going to be the speed. Just got to make sure it's all case sensitive. We've got it there, speed, and that'll be to movement. Now I can't remember if it is square movement dot. I think it's square magnitude, or you could just use magnitude, but a bit of a speed trick by using square magnitude. I'll need to just double check, but square magnitude should work. Square magnitude, and then we can close that off as well. Right, so just making sure that this is all spelled correctly. Magnitude, movement, yes, y, and the x axis, and we've got the vertical speed. Fantastic. So if we go ahead and save that, sorry, let's go ahead and file save. And that should be the final bit for us to get our movement across. So let's go ahead, and if we run that now, you should see the animation. So there's the right, the up, the left, and the down. If he stands still, there's his idle. Right guys, so that is it. We could also obviously do 8 directional, more sort of animations. If he's going at an angle and you want to do that, you can just create the sprites in your Photoshop. But this is just the simplest way to make the movement speed for our top-down in Unity. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you could hit the subscribes if you're new here, and also give us a thumbs up, that'll be greatly appreciated. We're going to be focusing on a number of tutorials. We're going to be bringing this Unity one up to speed along with our construct series. So stay tuned, it's going to get heated in here. As always guys, I'll catch you guys in the next one.